You have been doing things, probably for a long time. The gestures, the accommodations, the effort that went into understanding them well enough to anticipate what they needed before they could articulate it themselves. The patience that required daily renewal. The quality of attention you brought that most people never bring to anything. The specific, generous, sustained doing that felt like love because it was love. Genuinely motivated, honestly offered, not strategic in its origin, even if it became anxious in its execution. And something about the return never quite matched the investment. Not because they did not notice. The avoidant notices more than they register outwardly. The effort was seen, filed, appreciated, in whatever form appreciation takes, in someone whose expression of it is limited by the same architecture that limits everything else. But doing, however generous, however sustained, however perfectly calibrated to what they actually needed, is not what moves the avoidant at the level where movement matters. Is not what produces the specific, involuntary, defenses down response that genuine attachment generates. Is not the thing they are actually measuring when they assess whether a relationship is one they can inhabit versus one they need to manage. The thing they value, the one thing, operating beneath everything else, is simpler than doing, more fundamental, more difficult to maintain under the specific pressures of an avoidant dynamic, and more rare than most people who enter these relationships initially understand. Presence, not physical proximity, not attentiveness in the behavioural sense of paying attention and responding and being there in the ways that presence is commonly understood to mean. Psychological presence, the specific interior quality of someone who is genuinely, fully, without division or performance or the anxious management of impression, actually here, in themselves, in contact with their own experience in real time, rather than monitoring the other person's experience and calibrating accordingly. The distinction sounds subtle. The experiential difference is enormous. Most people in relationships with avoidance, gradually and often without fully noticing, shift from genuine presence to managed presence. The relationship's specific dynamics, the uncertainty, the intermittent warmth, the need to read temperature and adjust response, train the partner into a particular orientation, away from their own interior and toward the avoidance, away from genuine self-presence and toward the vigilant, other-focused attentiveness that the dynamic rewards in the short term and depletes in the long. The shift is understandable, rational even, given the conditions. When another person's emotional availability is inconsistent, monitoring that availability becomes a practical necessity. When closeness triggers withdrawal, calibrating the expression of closeness becomes a relational survival strategy. When the relationship's temperature changes without clear signal, reading the temperature becomes a constant background occupation. All of this is comprehensible, none of it is presence. And the avoidant, whose sensitivity to the quality of another person's interior state is, as established throughout this series, operating below conscious analysis, feels the difference, not as a judgment, as a quality of what the interaction contains, as the specific atmospheric difference between being with someone who is genuinely in themselves and being with someone who is genuinely in you. The avoidance system was built, at its foundation, around a specific relational wound. The wound of having needed attunement, genuine, accurate, you specifically receiving presence, and having received management instead. A caregiver who was physically present but psychologically elsewhere, who responded to the surface behaviour rather than the interior experience, who provided what seemed externally appropriate rather than what was actually needed. The child in that environment learned something about what other people's presence actually contains. That it is possible to be with someone who is, in all the measurable external ways, attending to you, and to be, at the level that actually registers, alone. That learning is what the avoidant carries into every subsequent relationship. The specific, embodied, nervous system level knowledge that presence and attentiveness are not the same thing. That someone can do everything right and still be fundamentally elsewhere. That the quality of interior contact, whether another person is actually, genuinely in themselves when they are with you, is what determines whether connection is happening or being performed. This knowledge makes the avoidant a particularly sensitive detector of one specific thing. whether the person in front of them is actually there. What genuine presence feels like from inside the experience of encountering it. It does not feel like being attended to. It feels like being with someone. The distinction is in where the other person's center of gravity lives. Attendance is organized around you, around what you are doing and feeling and needing and how to respond to it. Presence is organized around themselves, around their own genuine engagement with the interaction, their own real response to what is happening, their own interior participating fully in the exchange rather than monitoring it. The person who is genuinely present brings something to the interaction, rather than primarily receiving something from it. Not in the performance sense, not the person who fills space with their own content to avoid genuine exchange. The specific quality of someone whose interior is active, alive, actually engaged with what is happening, rather than oriented primarily toward the other person's reaction to their engagement. This is what the avoidance system reads as safe. Not safe in the sense of non-threatening, though it is that too. Safe in the deeper sense. The sense of encountering someone whose realness is not contingent on the interaction going well, whose sense of themselves does not require specific responses from the avoidant in order to remain intact, whose presence would continue to be genuine, whether the avoidant responds warmly or retreats, whether the interaction deepens or remains surface, whether the relationship progresses or plateaus. That unconditional quality of genuine self-presence is what the avoidant system cannot manufacture through management and cannot find in someone who has lost it through the dynamic specific erosions. Here is the specific mechanism by which doing, however generous, fails to produce what presence produces. Doing is organized around the other person. At its root, in the context of this kind of relationship, doing is a response to the other person's state, their needs, their reactions, what would please them or comfort them or prevent the withdrawal that the doer is, consciously or not, trying to forestall. This organization, however loving its motivation, communicates something at the frequency the avoidant reads most accurately, that the doer's primary occupation is the avoidant. And a person whose primary occupation is the avoidant is a person who is not fully in themselves, whose interior is organized around someone else's responses, who is, in the most fundamental sense, not present, because presence requires being actually somewhere, and they are not fully in themselves. They are in the avoidant's reactions, in the temperature of the interaction, in the perpetual assessment of what is needed next. The avoidant does not experience this as love, though it is love. They experience it as weight, as the specific atmospheric pressure of being someone else's primary orientation, as the felt sense that their responses are consequential to another person's interior stability in a way that makes the interaction carry a cost. And cost, for the avoidance system, produces what it always produces: distance. The person who maintains genuine presence throughout the specific pressures of an avoidant dynamic is extraordinarily rare, not because they are exceptional in some abstract way, because the dynamic is specifically designed in its functional operation to erode presence. The intermittent reinforcement trains monitoring. The uncertainty trains anxiety. The withdrawal trains pursuit. The specific relational conditions of this kind of dynamic produce, in people who are not actively, deliberately, consistently maintaining their own interior ground, the gradual shift from self-presence to other focus that eventually empties the interaction of the very quality the avoidant most values. This is one of the genuine tragedies of avoidant relationships. The person who loved the avoidant entered with genuine presence, was, in the early period, actually there, in themselves, engaged, bringing their own alive interior to the exchange. This is partly why the early period felt different, more mutual, more genuinely connecting. And then the dynamic ran its course, and the presence eroded. And the thing that made the early connection feel real became increasingly unavailable as the relationship's specific conditions trained the partner away from the interior ground that presence requires. The avoidant, who felt the early presence and valued it without necessarily having language for what they were valuing, registered its erosion. experience the relationship becoming something different from what it was, something heavier, more organised around management, less alive. And the management strategies that were already running found renewed material in the shift. Maintaining presence under these conditions is not passive. It is not the natural consequence of loving authentically or caring genuinely. It is active, ongoing, specific work. The deliberate, repeated practice of returning to your own interior when the dynamic's pull is toward the avoidance. It looks like having an answer to the question, what do I actually feel right now, that is not organised around what the avoidance behaviour seems to indicate. Like having desires and opinions and responses that are genuinely your own, rather than calibrated against the interaction's temperature. Like being able to be in a difficult moment with the avoidant, the withdrawal, the distance, the temperature drop, and remain in contact with your own experience of it, rather than immediately organising around managing their experience of it. It looks like being a person who is visibly, consistently, without performance, occupied with themselves. Not selfishly, not indifferently. Occupied in the specific sense of someone whose interior is full enough with their own genuine engagement with life, that the relationship is one of the things they are bringing themselves to, rather than the thing their self is organised around. This quality, genuine, self-grounded, not contingent on the avoidance responses, is what the avoidance system reads as worth staying for, worth moving toward, worth the risk of the approach that the system was built to prevent. The deepest truth in all of this: the avoidant is not looking for someone who does more, does better, does with greater consistency or creativity or calibration. The doing is seen and it is not what moves them. They are looking for someone who is genuinely present in themselves, who brings their actual, alive, not organised around the avoidant interior into contact with theirs, who creates, through the quality of their genuine self-presence, the specific condition that the avoidance nervous system has been scanning for across an entire relational history without finding it reliably. The condition of actual contact, not managed interaction, not careful doing, not the performance of availability or the demonstration of investment. The real thing. Two interiors, both genuinely present, actually meeting. That meeting, simple in description, rare in practice, requiring of both people a quality of genuine self-presence that the avoidant dynamic systematically undermines, is what the avoidant values above everything else you could bring. Not because presence is more loving than the doing, because presence is the condition under which love can actually be received rather than managed, under which the avoidant system, encountering something genuinely real rather than something carefully performed, can do what it was never designed to do: lower and stay lowered, and discover that what it was protecting against and what it was always hoping for were, from the beginning, the same thing: someone actually there.